So I don't feel like I'm alone when I say that one of the most fun parts about a new Pokemon game release are all of the rumors that come before it, even if those rumors end up being completely fake. Every time a new Pokemon game comes out, there are a lot of rumors that come with it, and while some of them end up becoming the real thing, most of them are completely bogus, but that doesn't mean they're not interesting. Which is why in today's video, we are going to look at rumored Pokemon from every generation to this point that never actually ended up happening, because even though they were completely fake, they were still pretty cool at the time and are still really cool ideas now. So with that being said, let's go ahead and check it out. So today's video is being made possible thanks in part to today's amazing sponsor, Ridge Wallet. And while I've always said that getting a Ridge Wallet is a smart move, now the wallets are getting smart with AirTag attachments, so you never have to lose your wallet again. With the AirTag money clip or cash strap, you can attach an AirTag to your wallet and find it if it ever goes missing with your phone. So even if you misplace your wallet, you'll always be able to know right where it is. Ridge has also introduced a new, enhanced version of these attachments with a carbon fiber cap that covers the AirTag if you prefer a more sophisticated look, but they also have their classic option without the carbon fiber as well. Now is also the perfect time to buy, as Ridge is currently running a summer sweepstakes where you could win an upgraded Hennessy Ford Bronco, or $75,000 if you prefer cash. You'll even get 10 bonus entries and 10% off when you use my link in the description, ridge.com/hoops, and code HOOPS at checkout to pick something up. I swear by these wallets personally, and now you can make them even better by making sure they never get lost. So be sure to check all of that out with the link in the description, and a big thank you to Ridge for supporting the channel. Okay, so naturally we are going to begin in Generation 1, however the interesting thing about the rumors of the earlier Pokemon games is that they're not quite cataloged or archived as well as some of the newer titles because the internet wasn't quite the thing back then that it is today. Nevertheless though, Generation 1 is iconic in particular for all of the rumors that were swirling around at that time, and one of the most prominent rumors specifically concerning Pokemon of that time period had to do with the Pokegods. The Pokegods were basically purported to be secret Pokemon that you could somehow obtain within Pokemon Red and Blue, and the different methods of obtaining them were basically as wacky as you might expect. Some of these Pokegods included ones that were completely fake, like evolutions for Venusaur, Charizard, and Blastoise, known as Sapsaur, Charcolt, and Rainer. However, other ones were Pokemon that did actually end up becoming the real thing, and were Pokemon that we would eventually see in Gold and Silver, like Pika-Blue, which was the name that the fans gave Meryl at the time, and was thought to be a water-type evolution of Pikachu or Raichu, as well as other Pokemon like Togepi and Ho-Oh. Since no one really knew at the time, at least in the West anyway, that Pokemon was going to be getting a second generation with new Pokemon, since Pokemon as a whole was such a new concept, many thought that there must be some kind of way to obtain these Pokemon within the Kanto games, and as such, rumors started flying around all over the place about how you could obtain them. Of course, none of it ended up being true one way or the other, but they definitely make for some really good stories all these years later. Moving on to Generation 2 though, we have a very interesting case, because it's a case of a fake rumored Pokemon that was seemingly and apparently promoted by an official source. And this rumor would have to do with a supposed legendary Pokemon that could be found somewhere on Mount Silver. According to Bulbapedia, the original guidebook for Pokemon Gold and Silver mentioned a mystery Pokemon that would appear near waterfalls within Mount Silver at midnight or very early in the morning, and this Pokemon was supposedly meant to represent legendary Pokemon from Gen 1 that didn't subsequently appear in Gen 2, possibly meaning that this could be a way that you could obtain those legendary Pokemon in these games, even though they don't otherwise appear in the wild in Gold and Silver. We've seen errors happen in guidebooks before, and that's not really anything new, but if this did indeed happen the way that Bulbapedia claims it did, then that is a huge error to make, because that is essentially claiming that there's a whole legendary within Mount Silver that doesn't exist, and you know that within the pre-internet days of Gen 2, that people would have had a field day with that, and the rumor probably spread like wildfire before everyone realized that it wasn't actually true. Now we come to Generation 3, and Generation 3 was a trickier one to figure out in this case because, as I said, the pre-internet Pokemon generations don't quite have their rumors archived quite as well as the newer ones, and Gen 3's was a harder one to find some solid rumors for because personally I don't really remember any either, but I was able to figure out a couple decent ones. I wasn't able to find any big community-wide rumors like the first two generations, so I decided to resort to some personal rumors, like this one by Burger Brosa on Reddit, who said that they were told if you leveled up Plusle and Minun to level 70 at the same time in a double battle, that they would combine into a much stronger Pokemon. This one actually felt pretty familiar to me because I feel like there were a lot of rumors like this surrounding Plusle and Minun and possible evolutions that they could have. Because obviously prior to that we had Pichu and Pikachu and Raichu in the Pika clone department, all of which were a part of a family that could evolve. So it only makes sense that some people would think or expect Plusle and Minun to be able to evolve as well. I also thought it would be fun to mention something here that wasn't really a rumor, but it's something that definitely was rumor-like, and it's something that I personally was completely convinced of myself, and that was that Latios and Latios were some kind of Lugia pre-evolution. In my 9 to 10-year-old brain, I thought that Latias and Latios looked a lot like Lugia, and they also had names that started with the letter L as well, and so I was personally convinced that they were related in some way, and if you did something or leveled them up in a special way, that they would evolve into Lugia. I don't think this was something that I spread around myself as a rumor, I think I just kept it to myself, but I was convinced that you could evolve these Pokemon somehow into Lugia. And I loved Lugia at the time, so I definitely did some investigating to figure out how you could do this. But alas, I was disappointed to find out that this was completely just fabricated in my own mind. We're going to go ahead and take a look at Gen 4 now though, and Gen 4, unlike Gen 3, actually does have a pretty significant community-wide rumor that was pretty prevalent at the time and is still prevalent to this day, and that is none other than the rumor of different typed starter Pokemon. I'm sure many of you have heard about it already, and I have even talked about it myself in recent videos, but it was reported at the time that the starter Pokemon for Diamond and Pearl were going to be typed differently than that of the traditional Grass, Fire, and Water starters. And similar to the Gen 2 rumor, this is even something that was reported by an official source, as it was stated both in official interviews and on the official Pokemon website that this was going to be the case. In fact, even Cerebi reported on this at the time as well. And this obviously caused a flurry of talk and speculation for something that ultimately, for some reason, even though it was officially talked about, did not end up happening. It might be the case though that this wasn't something that was just a rumor or an error at all though. It could be something that Game Freak was actually considering at the time given these official reports, but then ended up changing their minds and decided to go with the traditional setup instead. We'll probably never know for sure what the situation really is here, but it's definitely one of the biggest cases in Pokemon of what could have been. Now we're going to move from Sinnoh to Unova, and with the Unova games is where these rumors start to get a lot more concrete in terms of them being archived for us to be able to easily look back on. Gen 5 was of course the era when we got Black 2 and White 2, the very first official sequels of a Pokemon game ever, and with such a new thing that was being introduced at the time, you can imagine that crazy rumors were flying all over the place. One of the rumors that had to do with these games is that we were going to get new Pokemon along with them, and in particular there was a rumor that claimed that we were going to get new starter Pokemon as well. This obviously didn't happen, but the report was that we were going to be getting a Grass-type bird Pokemon, a Fire-type elephant Pokemon, and a Water-type platypus Pokemon. Now, for as crazy as this rumor is, I can't say that it's one that wouldn't have been absolutely amazing, because even though we were in the same Unova region in Black 2 and White 2, having new starters to explore that region with would have been absolutely amazing, and I think would have drummed up a lot of additional hype for the games. However, this of course didn't end up happening, but it wasn't all for naught, however, because Black and White 2 still ended up being fantastic titles and some of my personal favorites. Generation 6 and the lead up to Pokemon X and Y was actually a golden age of Pokemon rumors. I remember hearing about so many interesting things, and regardless of whether it was real or fake, I was hooked to it all. And while there were a number of fake leaked Pokemon from this generation that never ended up becoming the real thing, one of the ones that I personally remember the most is a fake, rumored Drowsy pre-evolution. This came in the form of a supposed Korokoro leak that showcased this new Pokemon and how it would evolve into Drowsy and then again into Hypno. At the time, especially because this was just the beginning of the modern rumor and leak age, and therefore I think it was a lot easier to fool people back then, it seemed like this was going to be the real deal, because the quality of it is actually really good. The design itself of this Pokemon is also really good too, and in my opinion makes it seem really believable as a possible baby version of the Drowsy family. However, just like all of the others in this video, it was sadly and obviously not the real thing. Gen 7 is another generation that also had a lot of really good rumors to its name, and they kind of exploded when it was revealed that we were going to be getting Alolan forms. At the time, this was a completely new and different concept, obviously, and so when it was officially revealed, people's brains started going crazy at the thought of all the possibilities. This obviously sprouted some rumors as well, and one of the more prominent ones that got a lot of people's attention, that a lot of people either thought was going to be real or wanted to be real, was the report that we were going to be getting an Alolan Arcanine and an Alolan Nidoking. The Alolan Arcanine was supposedly going to be Water-type, and the Alolan Nidoking was going to be Poison-fighting. A lot of people actually believed the Arcanine rumor, even though it was crazy considering it said that Arcanine would be a Water type, simply because we just received an Ice-type Vulpix, which seemed as equally crazy and unlikely. Not to mention that Vulpix and Ninetales are also Growlithe and Arcanine's counterpart. And if that was believable and could legitimately happen, then a poison-fighting type Nidoking could certainly happen as well. This is another one that would have been amazing to see become the real thing, but unfortunately, it didn't end up happening that way. Getting into Gen 8 though, we are now getting into super recent territory, and so I'm sure a lot of this is very fresh in a lot of your minds. Some of the most notable rumored Pokemon that didn't end up happening from this generation is probably first and foremost armored Pokemon. There was a rumor that came out prior to the reveal of Pokemon Sword and Shield that claimed that the new games would be called Sword and Shield and that the region would be set in Great Britain. And so when people caught wind of this rumor and saw that those parts of it were correct, we gave a lot more credence and weight to the other stuff that came in this rumor as well. And a part of that was the claim that there were going to be armored Pokemon in these games. It was purportedly something similar to Mega Evolution, and the rumor stated that we were going to be getting armored Charizard, armored Mewtwo, armored Flygon, and even armored Zeraora. The concept sounded pretty interesting and intriguing at the time, especially due to the fact that this particular rumor, as I said, got some details correct concerning the name and setting of the games. However, this obviously ended up being fake, and we ended up getting Gigantamax Pokemon in these games instead. And now, let's go ahead and move on to the most recent generation as of the making of this video, the Scarlet and Violet themed Generation 9. Now obviously all of this stuff is still super recent, and so I'm sure many of you still remember it very vividly. And when it comes to Pokemon that were rumored for Scarlet and Violet that didn't end up happening, one of the most prominent is definitely this purported final evolution for Fuecoco. This guy popped up on the internet just a little bit after Scarlet and Violet were revealed, and there was a decent amount of discussion about whether it was real or fake. And I think something that actually helped its legitimacy a little bit is that we had seen similar things in previous generations actually end up being true, like the leaked concept art of the Alola starters from Gen 7. We ultimately ended up getting Skeledirge instead though, which personally I'm okay with because I think I prefer Skeledirge to this Pokemon. With that said though, those were some rumored Pokemon from every generation that never actually happened. If you guys enjoyed the video, be sure to give it a like and let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, and which of these rumored Pokemon you would have personally liked to have seen become real the most. If you're new to the channel as well, be sure to subscribe for more Pokemon content all the time, and with all of that being said, I will be back with another new video very soon. If you'd like to further support the channel as well in the meantime, be sure to check out my Pokemon remixes on Spotify, Apple Music, and other streaming services. It helps the channel a ton and is very much appreciated. I will be back with another new video very soon though, so until then, as always, thank you guys so much for watching this one. I really appreciate it, and I will smell you guys later.